Again, Erev Shabbos, everybody. Welcome to Jerry's Parsha Ponderings for Parsha's Noach 5782. In last week's Parsha, we spoke about how water is the source of all life. And in the beginning of the Parsha, just to reiterate what we spoke about last week, we said how V'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim, that in the beginning, God said, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, God created the heaven and the earth was tohu vavohu b'choshech al panei tehom, v'ruach Elohim merachefet al hamayim, and then God said, Vayomer Elohim yehi or. But the water came as a necessary prerequisite for life. So when it says that Hashem created the heavens and the earth, clearly the water was part of all that. This week I want to discuss what happens when the water goes off the rails. And let us proceed. So the water was on the land for 40 days and nights, and in a later discussion we'll discuss the numbers 40 and 7 and how they keep recurring. That's not for today, but just something I was thinking about. Most of these talks, by the way, are things that just pop into my head while I'm going over the Parsha. Every day I do the Aliyah for that day. And it occurred to me that the Torah says, "Vayehi hageshem al haaretz arba'im yom va'arba'im laila." The Geshem was on the earth. Geshem is the root of the word gashmiut. Right? Every aspect of our life ultimately comes from the water. We crawled out of the sea at some point, who knows how long ago. Right? We discussed last week how before humanity was created, there was no time. There was no possibility of time, because only living beings can be time and space bound. Hashem is not space bound, and before life was created, there was no time. So we don't know how long that time was. But we do know that in order for there to be life, there had to be water. So life, and this is one of the reasons we said this also last week, why the Torah is compared to water, because we cannot be without water, we'll die. So too, we can't be without Torah, we'll die. But we see that water can be our saving grace, yet it can also be the source of our destruction. And how do those two things shtim, if you will? How do we reconcile those two ideas? And it occurred to me that because the Geshem, we just a week or so ago, we benched Geshem, right? We started saying Mashiv Haruach Umared HaGashem, because we need there to be rain so that there can be food, so that there can be life. So we can't live without it, as I have been saying. So what happened at the time of Noach? That Hashem had to take our very source of life and turn it into a destructive force. And I think if we look early in the Parsha, it says, Vatimalei haaretz chamas. The world was full of evil, however you want to translate Hamas. I have lots of ways I'd like to translate Hamas. A lot of them include heavy weaponry. But in this case, there are no coincidences, right? If you remember from last year, there are no coincidences. It's not a coincidence that they call themselves Hamas. But the world was full of evil. And not just robbery, people not respecting other people's property or other people's rights, if you will. We'll leave that. But just the whole idea of the absolute corruption. See, I'm going into all these topics I want to talk about, but the corruption that existed, there was no respect people one to another. And not only that, there was no respect not only for their property, but for their person and for their mates. And there was terrible sexual perversion, all sorts of other perversions. The dogs were sleeping with the cats, apocalypse of biblical proportion, to borrow a line from Ghostbusters. But this is what was happening at the time of Noach. In other words, people's gashmias went off the rails. People went off the rails. All of creation went off the rails. Sounds familiar? But people were not doing as they were meant to do. They were making very bad choices. And we learned last week that ultimately our choices are our own, despite the fact that Hashem knows what we're going to choose. And that's one of the big paradoxes that humanity has to live with, because we can't conceive of those two notions existing simultaneously. Yet they do. Yet they do, despite our lack of comprehension or understanding, or quite frankly, our inability to understand. But we used our gashmiut incorrectly. And therefore, Hashem took the geshem and turned it into a weapon against us. The lesson here is we have to be very careful with our geshem. We have to be very careful with our gashmiut and how we use it. Do we use it to improve our lives and the lives of others, or do we use it as a weapon? You know, I was thinking a little bit this week about what happened when Facebook went down, and how for, oh my goodness, so many hours we had to exist without Facebook. And I'm wondering if perhaps that was not if it was. Of course it was a blessing. But I have seen Facebook used, and when I say Facebook, I don't mean only Facebook, I mean social media in general, as a weapon against people. And what I mean by that is, be careful what you show off. You know, people are always, they're posting pictures about this and that and how wonderful this is and how wonderful that is, yet none of us really know what's going on inside of another person. We thought, oh, look, their life is so wonderful, and everyone's hurting. Everybody's hurting. Everybody is fighting a battle we can't understand. Everybody. My bubby, Zechroina Lavracha, used to say, if everyone put their tsuris out on the tree, everyone would take their own, because you don't really know what's going on by the other person. So when we're posting pictures of, you know, our big families, Baruch Hashem, and we should enjoy and love our families, let's also think about the friend or the acquaintance that might be looking at that can't have children. Or when we show a picture of our new Tesla, or our new Lexus, or our new Mustang, guilty, right? Let's think about the person that can't afford a new car. We have to think about that. Should I really post this? Is this going to make another person feel bad? When we have the new house, yes, we want to use it for achnasas archim and to have shiurim, yes. But does it have to look like, you know, a McMansion on a street where it may not necessarily belong? That's using your gashmias not in the right way. And that's what the lesson of the flood. And yes, many opinions, the flood was the meteor that hit the earth and the dinosaurs disappeared, and very possible, probably likely. But you know, listen, if you haven't seen the movie Deep Impact, or what was the other one with the Armageddon, right? That was Bruce Willis, right? The other one was Tia Leone, I think, and I don't remember. It's not important, beyond the scope of this course. But what happened? The meteor hits the Earth. What's the first thing that happens? The whole Earth floods, everybody drowns. Is that what happened here? Yeah, probably. I don't know. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The point is that Hashem took our Gashmiut and turned it into a weapon because we did the same thing to other people. And that is what we have to be very careful about. So, one other thought I just wanted to talk about. And yes, I could not avoid the Dark Side of the Moon album cover for this week's Parsha. But Hashem makes a pact, a covenant, a brit with the world. And he says, Et kashti natati ba'anan v'haitala od brit beini uvein haaretz. I'm placing my bow, the rainbow, in the sky. And that is a sign of the covenant between me and between the world. What does the rainbow have to do with? And I'm not going to get into other meanings of the rainbow. But why the rainbow? Well, this is where the album cover comes in. What is a rainbow? It's a prism. And where do you see a rainbow? Where there's water. After a storm, if you're by a waterfall, this summer I had the schus, I will say this, to actually go to Yellowstone and see the Yellowstone River coming down the falls, the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. It's magnificent. And where you see the falls, you'll see there's always this rainbow there. What's the rainbow? Light goes in, it refracts, and it comes out the other side. That's what you're seeing. What you're seeing are the components of light. Let's go back to Vayehi Or. And what did we say last week? That the Or is the essence of Hashem. Hashem is showing us. We see light. We see light. But we don't see what's inside the light. What makes up the light? The colors of the rainbow. And it's not just the colors of the rainbow. It's energy. We don't really understand what we're seeing. Everything is hidden. Yet Hashem is saying to us, when we see the rainbow, remember, things are not always as they seem. What you think you see isn't a fraction of what you're actually seeing. And then when we get to the other side of the rainbow bridge, notice that that's what they call it. Why the rainbow bridge? Because once you're over the rainbow, I'm coming up with all these references, right? You're going to look back, and then you're going to see, that's what that meant. The old ufanai lo yera'u. But that's what the rainbow is. That's the brit, the covenant. God is saying, yes, the water, which is the very source of life, can be the greatest blessing, and it can cause the greatest destruction. But when I am in control, the I, the Hashem, the Yud-Ke, Vav-Ke, the force with the capital F, I'm able to control that and use it for your benefit. So we have to be careful how we use our Gashmiut and make sure that we're using it the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to. Rabbosai, Shabbos Makar HaBracha. The greatest bracha is Shabbos, of all the gifts that Hashem gave us. We spoke about that last week, and we will speak about it every week. So let's use our Gashmius this week and every week to make our Shabbos tables more welcoming. Bring in a guest. You have a few, check out your local Tomchei Shabbos. Make sure everyone in your community has. And if they don't, use your Gashmiut. for that, so that Hashem will send more gishmei bracha to you. God knows where the money's got to go, and if we use it correctly, we will be so blessed. Don't roll on Shabbos. Have a great Shabbos. Spend time with your family. Kiddush, challah, soup, chicken, fish. That's what we use our Gashmias for. Have a very wonderful Shabbos. Have a great week. Make it a spectacular, spectacular weekend.